All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us today, and if you got here at noon, thanks for sticking with us. We are at the last panel of the day, and I do realize we are the only thing between you all and cocktails, so I will keep that in mind as we progress through this. But I am very excited for the group that we have assembled here today. I'll kick it over to each of you to introduce yourselves in a minute. Just very quickly, I'll say my name is Eric Conrad. I am the Executive Vice President of Rights and Partnerships for Sportradar. I've been with the company for a little bit over 2 years now, and I have the fortune of calling each of our panelists our partners. But not only are they our partners, they are also key decision makers for their organizations, and they've been thought leaders throughout their careers in the sports industry. So thank you all for joining. I'll kick it over to you now. If you could tell us about your role, responsibilities, a bit about your career path in the sports industry, and then so we can each get to know you a little bit more on a personal level. 2 passion points, one in sports, so a sport team player that you follow, but not from the properties you represent. We're not creating drama. And then a passion point or a cause you support outside of the sports industry. So maybe, Judy, if we start with you, ladies first.
Yeah, sure. So thank you, everybody. I'm really excited to be here. Judy Matthew, I'm with U.S. Soccer. I oversee our media space. I've been with U.S. Soccer for 2 years now, managing our media relationships with all of our rights holders, as well as production of our events and licensing of our content. Prior to that, I was with MLS for 12 years, overseeing our digital space, so worked very closely with our clubs to launch their digital presence, as well as growing our own platforms and helping monetize those. And also did a small time with consulting for Angel City FC, the world's highest worth women's soccer team right now, but helped them launch their digital presence back in 2013. So, sorry, 2023. Very excited to be here and to meet you all. Passions, sports-wise, I'm a New Yorker, so Knicks, Mets all day. And outside of that is my family, my 9-year-old, and spending some quality time with them.
Great. Joe?
Joe Solosky, Managing Director of Sports Betting at NASCAR. Very excited to be here, and thank you for the opportunity. In my role, alongside with my colleague Ray, who's here, we oversee anything that touches the sports betting space at NASCAR. Obviously, sports betting, online sports betting, fantasy sports, iGaming, anything tangential to that space kind of falls into our remit. Been with NASCAR for the last 3.5 years now, and actually prior to NASCAR, I'm a proud Sportradar alumni. I was with Sportradar for 6 years prior to NASCAR, 3 years internationally out of one of our Germany offices, and then 3 years in the U.S. After sports betting legalized here. Passion point, other side of the house, on the New York side, I'm a huge Yankees fan, so very excited to go to Subway Series tomorrow night and root on Garrett Cole. From another passion point, I'm a Navy veteran, so very involved in the military space with problem gambling, part of a board with a group called Kindbridge that does some research around problem gambling in the military veteran community, and doing some good work there to try and assist in that world. So thank you, and look forward to the discussion.
And I'm Scott Kaufman-Ross, Executive Vice President of Media and Gaming at the NBA. So for about 6 years now, I've overseen everything related to sports betting, fantasy sports, similar to Joe. And over the past 3 years, I've also been working very closely on our media business. It's been a very slow year for the NBA in the media space. I've been at the NBA for 13 years, holding various roles from finance to strategy, and then moving on to create our new department focused on sports betting and now in media as well. And before that, I was at Goldman Sachs as an investment research analyst. In terms of passions, I am also a diehard New York Mets fan, so you're outnumbered, Joe. Sorry about that. And I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, so they sort of take on all of my passions at the moment. I don't have time for anything else, but yeah.
Great, thank you guys. All right, so before we get into the questions and the topics for discussion, let me just set the stage for, why are we even here for this topic of, monetizing the new sports media industry. our sports media industry has changed more in the last decade than perhaps any other 10 years prior to that. And while that statement might sound obvious and trite to many of you in the room, the reality is many questions still surround the most effective way to monetize your fans and audience. The three guests that we have here today have done an excellent job in navigating this challenging landscape. What are the things they have had to navigate? And this is not an exhaustive list, but just a few things. One, we talked about it on the previous panels, the decline in the traditional pay television industry, right? From somewhere north of 100 million homes in the US to now somewhere around 50, 55 million. The rise of FANGs, if you guys remember that term from 2013-ish, around then, and how that further fragmented consumption and took away share of audience from the linear networks. The launch of streaming platforms by the traditional media players and the different monetization methods that came along with that, right? So is it AVOD, is it SVOD, is it a FAST platform? The legalization of sports betting in 2018, which provided yet another outlet for sports content and video and something to factor in your distribution strategy. And all this while still managing investment in their own tech infrastructure for launching or enhancing their own direct-to-consumer platform. Yet through all this upheaval, the sports industry has still seen dramatic growth when it comes to media rights fees, somewhere around $15 billion spent in 2015 to around $29 billion today. And you all have also been very successful in growing your reach and your revenue over the last decade. So maybe we'll start there. If we can talk about a little bit about your strategy and the goals for monetizing content in this new industry. So Scott, if you don't mind, we'll start with you. And I will preface, you're not expected to discuss anything about ongoing negotiations right now.
I don't know what you could be talking about.
Good.
Well, I don't know why the rest of us need to speak. That was a perfect intro. I think you summed it up pretty well. I think let's hit the bar. Look, what I would say is our strategy is to make sure that we're meeting our fans where they are. And as you pointed out, there has been a shift in how our fans are consuming content. Some of them are leaving the linear bundle and shifting towards digital platforms to streaming services. And we need to make sure we're meeting our fans wherever they are. However, while many of them are on streaming platforms, there are still a large number of our fans that continue to prefer to consume content through linear television. So we have to make sure that we're striking the balance. We have to have a hybrid approach and make sure we're reaching fans that are consuming content in different ways. And I think as you pointed out as well, with digital distribution, that creates all kinds of new experiences and new ways that our potential partners and our current partners are engaging with our fans, and it has attracted new entrants into the sports media space. It has caused those who have been in the space to think differently and to launch new platforms and new features. And so for us, we have to make sure that we're adapting to all of this and that we're being nimble and we're being flexible. And as we're looking to do a new deal over the next period of time, it's going to cover potentially another 10 years, and the change will continue. And so we have to make sure we have the flexibility to adapt to how our fans are rapidly changing their consumption patterns.
Joe?
Yeah, so I'll set the stage a little bit in terms of what we do at NASCAR from a broadcast perspective. So for the last 10 plus years, we've had two broadcast partners with Fox and NBC. So Fox would cover the first portion of the season, and then NBC would cover the second portion of the season, which runs from February to November. We're at an inflection point now and a really momentous point for us now at NASCAR, where we're starting a new media rights partnership in 2025 for the next 7 years through 2031, where we'll continue to work with those partners as our incumbents with Fox and NBC. But instead of splitting up by halves, Fox and NBC will each have the first 13. Fox will have the first 13 races, 12 or 13 races of the season. NBC will have the last 12 or 13 races of the season. We're really excited to add Amazon and Prime and Warner Brothers Discovery to the middle part of our season. So they'll each have 5 races in the middle parts of those seasons. So with that is the first time that NASCAR is really endeavoring in the direct-to-consumer side of things with Prime and also some of Warner Brothers Discovery's partners and distribution partners. So it's things that we're obviously, we announced that partnership or those partnerships earlier this year. in terms of enacting and executing what that's going to look like for next season. As Scott said, prior partners from a sponsorship perspective, sports betting partners, which is close to my world, and moving forward, potential partners as well as a new avenue to bring those groups into our sport, and we're really excited about it.
Judy?
Yeah, so we, for those of you in the room that don't know, we took our rights back about 2 years ago and have fresh partnerships domestically with Warner Brothers Discovery as well as Telemundo. So this has allowed us to revisit modeling and stay close to monetization across the board. I think most importantly for us, it's given us the ability to rethink how to package and how to expand all of our partner platforms and make sure that they are featured across the board, not just on our O&Os, but also across all of our new partner offerings. So that's something that's been really top of mind for us. Additionally, when it comes to monetization, it's really key to our business because we are a 501c3. So any of the revenue that is driven by our teams goes back to building the sport, which is extremely important to us. Whether it's our national teams, our extended national teams, youth national teams, or member organizations, we're always thinking of new ways to drive revenue so that we can, make sure that the sport continues to grow throughout the United States and beyond. So.
Great. So what I find interesting is, all three of your, properties are distributed through traditional media methods, direct-to-consumer streaming, and whether that's via independent or because it's part of a media conglomerate. Clearly, you guys had to factor in, many things, but along those lines, reach, the constant, right? Reach versus revenue. Sometimes you can have both. But along those lines or any other factors, what goes into your thought process when kind of developing this distribution strategy for your, call it the live content for now? Maybe Judy?
Yeah, I think to the point that Scott made earlier is we need to be where our fans are, right? And they're consuming in different ways. Linear hasn't completely dropped off. People are still consuming on linear. They're consuming on digital. So there's always new ways, and there's always fans everywhere. So to us, it's just making sure that we are thinking through strategically of not forcing the fans to go to one channel, but versus just us going to them. We are lucky enough where our current domestic partners have streaming platforms that are highly recognized and have other offerings as well. So we're already seeing that traffic and capitalizing on that as well. Whether it's being able to watch on Telemundo or Peacock or TNT or Max, that's something that we're definitely taking advantage of and making sure that our fans are getting content that way. Additionally, we're trying to explore new media in new ways, whether it's through partnerships like one that we're actually announcing today with X Stadium and bringing content through the VR virtual reality experience and continuing to enhance the fan experience in that way. We're just trying to make sure that our content is everywhere where our fans are.
Yeah, and I would add that our fans have been used to obviously watching our races on their platforms via our incumbent partners with Fox and NBC the last 10 plus years, and adding two new exciting partners with Amazon and Prime and Warner Brothers Discovery. One of the things that we really did to augment that is we also announced sort of a gamification or competition angle where we're going to have a, similar to what the NBA has done and other leagues have kind of followed suit, is an in-season tournament. So that portion of the season will cover late June through late July or early August. So we'll have kind of a bracket-style tournament alongside Amazon Prime and Warner Brothers Discovery, things that they're used to doing with tournaments like March Madness, and I think that'll be something that we can lean into. I know it's something that we could lean into from the sports betting perspective with odds integrations, ownership of the brackets, and different types of ways and styles that we can gamify that in-season tournament and keep people engaged. We're at a time where the NBA season is done, the NHL is done, we're getting ready for, or the country is getting ready for the NFL start of the season. It's a time that we can really capitalize on the popularity of NASCAR.
Look, the thing I would add is, obviously, as I said before, we want to be where our fans are. We want to make sure we're reaching fans on streaming, on linear TV, on broadcast TV. But I think the other piece of it is we have to own the relationship with the consumer as well. And so we've spent a lot of time over the past couple of years investing in our direct-to-consumer offerings. We launched a new app in 2022. We invested quite a bit in our League Pass product because we realized that for so many years we were several layers removed from our fans. We our fans subscribed to cable, the cable companies had networks, and then the networks had deals with us. And so we were 3 layers removed from our fans. And we had to have that direct relationship with the fan and learn more about them and understand what drives them, how they consume content, what else they purchase, how they exhibit their fandom. And we need to be investing in that. So we have spent a lot of time building new fan experiences. And as part of that, if you subscribe to NBA League Pass, we have up to 12 different feeds for every game. We have a home feed, an away feed, an influencer feed, alternate languages, sports betting elements. I mean, we have really tried to take this trend towards personalization. And I think that's another thing that we've seen in terms of the trends in media is fans want what they want when they want it, right? That's how streaming came to pass. People didn't want to just have to watch whatever was programmed by the network at that period of time. They said, I want to watch this program at this time, and that's where binging came from. And so we have seen an opportunity that sports are really the last piece of content that you have to consume live. Yeah. And that has created a lot of opportunity for us to really convene an audience around our games and wherever they're consuming their content.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you each hit on alternate types of ways of consuming the live game, right? Is that something? Do you guys think that will continue to evolve over time?
I do. I think that's one of the primary benefits of this shift from consuming content via linear platforms to digital is traditionally on linear platforms, it was a one-to-many experience. It was a passive, not interactive experience. Every single fan was consuming the content the same way because there was no alternative. When you're on a digital platform, you have this opportunity for customization and personalization. And there's alternate feeds, but there's also features that you can layer on top of your content that can also enhance the experience for fans. So for example, something we've done with you guys at Sportradar through your MBet product is bring sports betting odds and information into the game broadcast, but to do so in what we call an opt-in fashion, right? Where the fan is choosing that particular digital overlay and putting the odds on top of it, and then we provide a pathway to get the consumer over if they want to place a bet. So that's not an experience that is appropriate for everyone and not something that we thought would make sense in the primary game telecast, this pervasive odds widget, but on a digital distribution platform where you can customize, where you can opt into that experience, it makes perfect sense. And so those are the things that we think are unlocked as more content is consumed digitally. It provides the pathway for that customization and personalization.
Yeah, great. I don't know, Joe, if you want to add.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what we're going to be doing for the first time next year as a property with NASCAR, is having that, again, first time direct-to-consumer opportunity for us. So, we haven't, while the executions haven't been fully laid out yet, we're going to have alternate broadcasts with our broadcast partners, and sports betting will likely be one of those. And to Scott's point, we beta tested this a while ago with our in-car cameras, but having an opt-in function for something like that is extremely important. So, and also an opt-out function as well. So not only for integrity purposes, but also for responsible gaming purposes and whatnot. But those are the conversations that we're having right now with our broadcast partners. But certainly around the personalization, I am relatively new to the sport of NASCAR, but as I've learned the sport over the last 3.5 years since I've been there, people are die-hard passionate about the drivers and just as equally die-hard against some drivers as well. So, there's a lot of personalization there where you're either for a team or against a team or for drivers against a certain driver, and that's something that we're talking to our broadcast partners about. And one of the groups that I neglected to mention earlier as well is outside of our Cup Series product, which is I mentioned earlier, but our Xfinity Series product, which is our tier right below the Cup Series, that's going to go to the CW network starting next year, or actually starting the end of this year. So that will be their flagship sports product going forward, and that's another opportunity to work with a relatively nascent provider in the sports space and work with them on alternate feeds and really talk to our younger fans and the demographics that we're trying to target.
They covered it.
What they said, but we've also been delving into the all-cast space recently. Actually, I think it was last week, we had an all-cast that was run by Men in Blazers alongside of Sam Ewis, who used to be one of our players on the national team. And again, it's about speaking to the different audiences that we have and making sure that we're giving them what they want without interrupting the experience for others that may not be as interested. So we did that, offered it on Max as well as on True TV. So it's something that we'll continue to explore with our partners so that we can cater to our different fan bases.
One question that that this discussion led to in my mind was, you would love to have endless optionality for personalization, customization. There is the user experience to consider, though, and I think on the previous panel it came up of Patrick said, like, do we have 10, 12 options? Like, how do I start selecting all this? So is content king in terms of what is the most important way or where to invest the dollar that you have? Or is the technology also as important?
Well, I think, just given the sale of Paramount, I think it's appropriate to say that content is king. And I think that's a phrase that Sumner Redstone made popular.
I'm taking credit, though.
Yeah, of course it was you. Look, I think content remains king, right? And clearly, premium live content is what drives audience. You look at the top 100 telecasts, and they're virtually all sports broadcasts. So I think that remains the case. But how you engage and enhance the experience for fans, I think that's where technology comes in. And obviously alternate broadcasts are one way, but we're experimenting with all kinds of other ways to do that. We pride ourselves on trying to be first to market with things like virtual reality. Obviously we were early movers in sports betting, and there's become new forms of media that are related to betting. So these are enhancements. I think it starts with the content, and you have to have the premium live content to underpin it, but how you use new technologies, new forms of media to enhance that, to drive in new audiences. And I also think another one is to get people to consume the game for longer periods of time, right? There's driving people in, and then there's also keeping their attention. And that's where a lot of these other features and forms of media I think can be really helpful, is keeping you tuned in for an extra 10, 15, 20 minutes.
Yep.
I mean, it's hard to weigh the two. I would say, though, if you look at where NASCAR has kind of invested their money, it would be hard to say that content is not a bigger priority for us. We invested in a large production and content facility in Concord, North Carolina, that opened just earlier this year. That was really centered around our negotiations with media rights partners for this new broadcast package that we have starting in 2025, and it's really meant to bring our broadcasters and work closely with our broadcasters in-house at this production facility. So not only is this facility meant for creating and distributing NASCAR content to our fans, but it's also a place where all of our broadcast partners will have a permanent presence at and work at with us and do potential sports betting podcasts out of that studio. Our broadcasters could do live broadcasts out of that studio, and it's something that we really invested in and something that we're super excited about. But to the point about technology, I mean, our data feed is really what runs the sport. It runs our competition for a sport where the cars are going 200 plus miles an hour, and results are sometimes determined by quarter of an inch. Going at those speeds, you need an accurate, reliable data feed. And it's something that, again, our competition has been built off the backbone of, but it also allows for really engaging content and storylines. We started a feature this year where we have estimated fuel gauges that our fans can see, so they can understand where their favorite driver is at in terms of when they may pit stop or when they may run out of gas and how close they are to the end of the race. It adds some more excitement and a better feeling of being alongside the driver in that competition.
I want to go back, Judy, to one thing you mentioned earlier, because now with the announcement of X Stadium, all three of you are on that platform as well, right? NBA, NASCAR? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you guys have any learnings from the time on that platform so far? Anything you can share?
I mean, we're brand new to it.
Yeah,
We've had 3 games where we feature some of our content following the matches. We're learning from it. We want to see if fans are consuming in this way and what exactly they want, and then iterating from there. We're hopeful that this will be something that will continue to drive engagement across the board. But yeah, looking to learn more.
Yeah. All right, I'll switch gears a little bit now to something that's important to almost everybody in this room. So we talked about, obviously, PASPA in 2018, opening yet another avenue for distribution and consumption of sports content. How has that guided your strategy, right? You all have different sponsors in the space. but also distribute your content on sportsbook platforms. Give us a little background on how you see that space today and evolving in the future.
Sure. Look, obviously this, for us, dates back to 2014 when Commissioner Adam Silver wrote an op-ed in the New York Times. It changed our position on sports betting, and we formally supported it in a legal and regulated way. And it stems from the fact that we know a lot of our fans are consuming NBA content through the lens of sports betting. A lot of our fans enjoy betting on sports, and it certainly, in our view, didn't make sense for that to be done in an unregulated offshore market where it was no transparency of information, no consumer protections, and if fans were going to be betting anyway, which they clearly demonstrated they were, it made sense to bring it into the sunlight. And we also know that those who choose to bet on sports, they're some of our most avid, most engaged fans. They consume more games for longer periods of time. And so we have leaned in on sports betting under the assumption that it's a way that a lot of our fans are choosing to consume our content. However, we also know that there are a lot of fans that do not enjoy sports betting or are underage or have gambling problems. And so it's really important to us and really shaped our strategy that we make sports betting what we call an opt-in experience. We want those who raise their hand for sports betting content to have it readily available. We want to make sure they have a first-class experience. We want to make sure our partners are using official data, that they can use authentic league IP to differentiate their platforms from the offshore market. We want our broadcast partners to be making it clear to our fans who the legal, licensed, regulated operators are and who they are not. And again, if you're watching a broadcast and you're thinking about what the spread is or what the over-under is or what this means for your bet, we want to make that experience available to you. And one of the things that we feel is really helpful with digital distribution is, again, it's that personalization. It facilitates the opt-in, and it makes it a little bit more of a frictionless experience. So, for example, we've had alternate telecast on linear for a number of years. We've had some with ESPN has done some of them, TNT has done some of them, our regional sports network partners have done them. But with linear, you have to just choose. Do you want the regular broadcast or do you want the betting broadcast? And they're two completely distinct items. Whereas in a digital environment, you can bring some of the sports betting elements, those digital overlays, the live odds widgets, on top of the traditional telecast, and you can blend them together, again, all in a personalized way, in an opt-in way. So this is where we think sports betting is headed. We want to bring it into the experience, but when you do so digitally, it can be done in a much more native, elegant way.
I applaud the panel so far because I feel like we've avoided the buzzword of fan engagement. So I'll break the ice. But every decision that we make as a group in NASCAR when it comes to sports betting is around fan engagement. But what does that mean ultimately for us? What it means is how does the embracing and doing partnerships in the legal sports betting space increase the bottom line of NASCAR, which is broadcast audience, ticket sales, merchandise sales, getting a new audience into the sport and getting an already engaged audience more engaged. So some of the early findings, so theoretically it makes sense, right, with the legalization of sports betting that because you bet on a race or a game that you're going to watch the race or you're going to attend a game, right? Theoretically that makes sense. It's been really hard for us anyway to actually find hard metrics that actually prove that correlation. So we don't know that with the legalization of sports betting truly how many more people are watching a race. Is the broadcast audience up because of the legalization of sports betting? It's still something that we're working on, but some of the early findings that we've seen, specifically with North Carolina, we did a study about 3 weeks after legalization, and 7 of 10 people who watched a race for the first time did so because they had placed a bet on a race in North Carolina, which is our biggest broadcast audience. We heard a statistic from one of our sportsbook partners that, and it wasn't for NASCAR, it was for another sport, but if they placed a prop bet on a game, they were 87% more likely to watch through the end of the game than had they not placed a prop bet on that game. So we're starting to understand that this theoretical thought process around sports betting is true, which I think we all agree on. And it's really kind of the backbone of how we make every decision in the space outside of all the integrity and player protection and responsible gaming measures.
Yeah, we've been a bit slower to this space. Obviously, with us being a national governing body, we needed to be a little bit more thoughtful and strategic around when to enter the space. Definitely learning a lot more right now and having conversations, and hopefully going to be entering in the space shortly. And I look forward to learning from you two on what you have to date that we can use as we delve into betting a little bit deeper.
Yeah, and we're very happy to be your partners as you enter that space
Exactly.
more aggressively.
And that's a great point too, and something that I've learned, in my time talking to Scott and his team, and some of the other leagues as well, is that while we compete for eyes and audience, this is a space that has been very collaborative. We are all about protecting the integrity of our sports and our leagues and our properties, and idea sharing and working with other leagues and properties is paramount for lessons learned, and issues that we face are not unique, right? They happen across all leagues, and it's something that I really appreciate in this world, is that we all kind of come together in our roles overseeing the sports betting space and working alongside one another.
I agree with that 100%. There's been more collaboration across the leagues in this area, just as we're sharing best practices, whether it be the right way for sports betting to be legalized and regulated, whether it be the right level of advertising and what's appropriate. These are the types of things that we have to all come together as a broader industry, right? Yep. Sports betting partners, data distribution partners, leagues, and say, we've seen what happens internationally, right? I mean, we've seen this playbook too many times where sports betting becomes legal, the marketing and advertising gets out of control, problem gaming gets out of control, and they have to kind of overcorrect and reel everything back in. We're trying not to make the same mistake. We're trying to be diligent and measured in how we roll out sports betting, and doing so in collaboration with the entire industry across stakeholders is clearly the best way to go about that. And so I agree, it's been kind of an unprecedented amount of best practice sharing in this space.
How do you guys view, are there certain demographics you guys are targeting as league and organizing bodies? And I think, Judy, I'll highlight, obviously with my background, that we know each other. It's phenomenal how many times your games, the Spanish language broadcast outrates the English language broadcast, right? You just have that passion point with Hispanics and Hispanic Americans here in the US. Are you guys, there's a natural correlation we all know about, bettors being younger, and you guys are always trying to make your average age younger for your broadcasts. Any other demographics there that you guys are targeting? Maybe, Judy, I'll start with you.
Yeah, look, I think what we've seen and what we found is that our audience just over-indexes when it comes to women, when it comes to multicultural and Spanish-speaking audiences. So to that, it's great for the game, and obviously it's something that in the betting space is what partners are actually looking for. So we are very conscious of the fact that we're speaking to different audiences, that we're able to kind of reach people in sports that are not usually part of others or following other sports. So we're trying to take advantage of that. For sure. I think one of the, aside of betting, one of the things that was key for us in this past year was making sure that we're distributing content equally across the board. Yeah. So we distribute 100% of all of our women's and men's games, which seems like something that should have been happening for a while, but actually wasn't. So it's something that, we're learning from and making sure that we are capitalizing on.
Outside of betting, it's just getting a younger audience. I mean, it's just key for us, right? And one of the ways that we really put that into practice, and it's not something that really falls under my remit, but is utilizing and meeting our younger audience where they are, right? With VR, with racing simulators, with Roblox and the metaverse and Fortnite, all these different ways, partnerships with Lego, right? All these different ways that we're trying to meet younger fans and get them engaged in the sport. That is hugely paramount for us, and I think, again, the direct-to-consumer opportunity that we have starting with next year is going to help us tremendously. And from tying in a little bit of betting to it, I think what the NFL did last year with sports books, I forget which partner it was specifically, but they had a promotion where if you placed a bet on the NFL, you got a free year of NFL Sunday Ticket, right? Like, that's something that we're potentially looking to do with partners next year around driving people to Prime to sign up and watch our races in the summer, or HBO Max to tune into our in-car cameras. So it's all ways to engage a younger audience. That instance in the betting space, but just generally overall trending younger.
Other leagues did that too. Look, for us, I mean, from a betting perspective, certainly our demographic, younger, I mean, not too young, of course, younger, tech savvy, really fits the profile of the sports bettor well, and so we think it's been a natural overlap. But I think the other piece for us is just the global piece. And the NBA is among the most global leagues in the world. And our partnership started as a global partnership, and we see an opportunity to continue to grow our fan base across the world. And we have a huge fan base in China and Latin America, in Europe, growing in Africa, in India, and so in a lot of those places, betting is an introductory vehicle for the NBA, right? They're out, they're betting on soccer, and then they see the NBA, and that's their first introduction into the NBA, and that might be an opportunity to create a new fan. So we are out looking internationally as new ways to get the NBA in front of a global audience. We have an advantage that basketball is the #1 participation sport in the world, and so that helps. We have basketball in the hands of young people, and so that helps us develop fans. But we're looking for all the different touch points and how we grow our global audience, and betting is just another one of them.
Yep. We're running out of time, so I'm gonna combine two questions in one. We haven't really, in the previous panels, we talked about highlight rights, the distribution of short form content. We haven't talked about long form, non-live content. So NASCAR, you guys did a series on Netflix that was very popular. We've seen other sports and leagues do that as well. You can choose both or either, but how do you guys view the distribution of short form content and long form content?
Joe, you haven't started a question, so.
So from talking to our Netflix series, that was something that I personally was excited about, because I knew that it was a way for me to connect with family and friends who, like me, didn't have any familiarity with the sport beforehand, and it really worked. I mean, one of the big lessons learned that we took from Netflix after the first series was that somewhere north of 80% of people who watched that show had never been to a race before.
Wow.
And we'll find out at the end of the season how many of those people actually went to a race throughout the season. So it's all part of NASCAR's just overall utilization of our engaging competition to bring new fans into the sport. We've raced in markets where we otherwise hadn't the past few years, where there is just a large audience of sports fans, like Los Angeles. We raced in the Coliseum where the Trojans play, and did a quarter-mile exhibition race the last 3 years. We'll likely do other events like that. We did a street race in Chicago, where, again, north of 70% of those attendees of the race had never been to a race before. So it's not necessarily, it's not content, but in terms of the Netflix show on the content side, that has really worked for us, and it's something that I hope continues, whether it's on the Netflix platform or with our new partners on the broadcast side, or even outside of the broadcast side.
Judy?
Yeah. So we have our senior national team games. We have anywhere from 20 to 25 games a year. So our schedule is a bit lighter than some of the leagues. So in that, we need to make sure that we take advantage of opportunities off the field as well to get our brand out there, to get our players out there. So premium content is definitely something that we're super focused on. Last year, we launched a project on Netflix as well, Under Pressure, which was the story of our women's national team preparing for and participating in the 2023 World Cup. So it was a great project to be a part of. It's something that we will continue to pursue. We are in a very big moment in soccer here in the States. We have 2026 World Cup coming here. So definitely more to come when it comes to that storytelling side. And we're definitely leaning on premium content to make sure that we continue to tell our own story, but also to build our players and build those stars.
Yeah, and for us, I would say, we've been embracers of social media for a long time. While there were some leagues that for a long period of time restricted the amount of highlights they put on social media, we leaned in from day one. And we have the largest social following of any sports league in the world. And we think that's one of our biggest competitive advantages. not just the young demographic, but the global demographic, how we embrace social. We have a huge social team that produces a tremendous amount of content that's produced directly for social platforms and uniquely for each one. And that's an area we spend a lot of time on. We believe that's our best marketing vehicle, and our best way to grow the fan base is by engaging with young people through social media. And on long form, obviously we had a very successful long form documentary in The Last Dance that came out during the pandemic, and that's a space that I think continue to watch. You'll see some more coming from us very soon. But both short form and long form are very important, very strategic for us in addition to live content.
It's great. You're leaving us with a teaser. I like it. Well, as the clock literally is ticking 0, thank you, the two of you, for flying up. Thank you to you for stepping out of what I know are ongoing negotiations.
Nothing going on.
Appreciate it. With that, I invite you all to join us for cocktails back upstairs where we were for lunch. And thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.